welcome, sir. We are very happy to have you with us. Sir, I have a few doubts in my mind which I thought I should clear with you. First of all, I would like to ask you a very pertinent question which probably lingers in the mind of the youth of today. What is the role of history in today's context? And how important do you think is the study of history?
Is important at least in two important respects. One is, unless this person has a rooting in his own tradition, he will not be able to have a very clear understanding of what the contribution of his nation has been. History is important because we have been taught a certain history which should not be really called as history, which was written for the purposes of meeting their own agenda by a set of people. Now, there is a need to rewrite history which is being presented in history books. So, for that, first of all, we need to understand for ourselves. So, there is a need to study history, first of all, to correct the false history that is being presented to us, number one. Number two, recently I have been visiting China for a few times. What I understand is one of the important things that the Chinese government has done is to make their own citizens aware of their own contributions in science and technology. If China is something which is progressive today, so one of the reasons I would say is a few decades back they decided that every citizen of China is aware of their own rich science and technological heritage. Unless this person is introduced to it, this person will not even develop a certain self-confidence with which he can move forward. So for the nation to build upon its own resources, it is important that the nation, particularly nations which have made significant contributions in their past, to make their children aware of their rich scientific heritage. So this is again second reason why it is important. And I would also say there is a third important aspect, purely from the viewpoint of the intellectual joy that you can derive. For instance, today you have a certain mechanism by which you are able to produce something, a certain result. For instance, this agriculture, if you just take, you have a certain mechanism by which you have been curing all the pests in the olden tradition. Now you have a certain mechanism which is going to be disastrous in the... So, from the viewpoint of even correcting yourself in certain directions which you have taken, study of history is important. So, you have to have a certain record of it. So, if we do not do that, then I think we are misleading the nation by trying to simply imbibe the history which has been handed over to us for a certain reason. So it will be very practical in certain disciplines. So if you know of this technique, so then you will be able to employ. Say today we are talking about the most important term is sustainable. So we have been having practices which are sustainable, which have sustained the nation for thousands of years. Today we have landed ourselves into a certain situation wherein you have adopted other technologies mindlessly, by which you are killing the natural resources which can nourish itself. So for instance, agriculture. So you felt that pumping in fertilizer is going to really make revolutions. Yes, it may make revolutions only for a shorter period. In the long run, so you are really putting the nation into disastrous position. So we need to understand what our agricultural practices have been. So how have been so from a cultural viewpoint, see, one is scientific viewpoint, the other is cultural viewpoint. How have you been able to gel well with the nature? So this is cultural history, if you know that. So if you take, since you are a Sanskrit professor, so you may be recalling, this was from Shakuntalam, Yasyatedya Shakuntaleti and so on. So there, so he beautifully brings in how she was enjoying with those creepers. See, so she will not consume anything. What is that sloka? It's a beautiful sloka, no? Yasya bhavat utsavaha seyamyati shakuntala padigraham sarvair anujnayatam. So this is a beautiful description of it. So it is not something which the poet simply creates out of imagination, but it is something which is a reflection of how people have been dealing with the nature. So you just consider themselves as your own kith and kin. I mean, this is the kind of relation. I mean, from the cultural viewpoint, this cultural history has to be presented. And the kind of veneration that you have for nature is something which can protect nature. No law will be able to protect. If you are venerating the tree, then you will not simply go and chop it. And even if you do, I mean, our culture has been such that, so like just extracting work from a labor, you extract the work from the labor and then say thank you, just pay him. But the amount of toiling that he has done for you, you will not be able to do anything. So similarly, even if you extract something from the nature, you had a certain attitude to share something with the nature. So you say excuse me to the nature also. There are passages in Veda which speak of this. So it is extremely important that we try to understand the cultural history of India as well as technological history of India, scientific history of India. So to make you proud of your own nation and then make you move forward with scientific spirit. I mean, the kind of spirit, inquiring spirit that we had today. I mean, even in IIT, I ask students, how do you know that the earth is moving around the sun? We are just taught. We don't ask the questions. And our tradition has been inquiring tradition. So that is very important.
Sir, it's very fascinating to know that being a professor of physics, you are so much interested in history, Sanskrit literature, cultural heritage of India. I feel Indians should revive the culture of barefoot historians. Probably this would create a cultural space. There could be an interaction, a dialogue. Do you think, like how there were the kinnaras, the singing minstrels, or the bards who used to carry the folk tales, etc., where they would also touch upon the sthala mahima of each place. Do you think we need to train our people to do all this as a part of nation building?
I would say it is extremely important to do that. As a first step, we have to take pride in certain practices which we have had. Unfortunately, so our current educational system is going in such a way, training people in such a way that you would only try to venerate certain other practices which have been there elsewhere. So you have been mindlessly trying to ape certain other things, and one of the reasons I would say is the intellectual slavery which India has undergone over a long period of time, and you try to undermine all your practices. It is extremely important for a person to understand that the importance that should be given to religion in trying to make up the mind of the person. Once it is made up in such a way that you take care of your family, you take care of your tree, see, I'll just give you an example. Cultural practices today, we have come to a certain understanding that certain practices that we have been having here have played an extremely important role. So since you talked about nation building, so the nation today, the Indian nation, has been able to withstand various economic shocks because of a certain lifestyle, this conservative lifestyle. The Greek went into crisis. Europe is undergoing a certain crisis because of a certain style of living. So the bards that you are talking, so through various means we have been able to convey the wisdom which people have to gain, which they will employ in various instances in life. Unknowingly they will build this. I am telling you, I have interacted very closely with people who have never gone into schools. So from remote pages in Bihar and Uttar Pradesh and so on. I am convinced that through the folklore, various songs which they have listened, they have learned very important lessons in life. which a PhD today, they say he may go to Harvard School of Business, but he will not be able to withstand the shocks which the life will give him. So this is something which we need to understand. So merely getting some degree and earning a few lakhs per month has no meaning in life. So it has various ups and downs which you have to handle with wisdom. And this wisdom is something which is given through various tales, various folklores, which will help you take right decisions at the right moment. So it is not that the book which we will give you any prescriptions or 20 different anecdotes or 200 things that you study in MBA as case studies. It is something else. I have interacted very closely with even millionaires, those who have not gone through any of these business training, they may be able to take decisions which are far more beneficial to the company than the trained game theorists. This is an admission which was made by game theorists, who is a professor at University of California. So I am just telling you that it is very important that we have to revive. So whether the government takes initiative or private institutions come up and take initiative, so it may not be received by the younger generation right now, but we may have to evolve certain mechanisms by which we will be able to effectively communicate the need of it, and it can be done with showing counter examples. We have not even analyzed and studied the other culture and the kind of sufferings that they are undergoing. So only when you know what kind of sufferings which they are undergoing, see, superficially having some comfort doesn't mean much. So you should be able to have the intellectual comfort. That is something which can be easily gained, and it was gained. So when some Ramayana is being narrated or Mahabharata is being narrated in various forms, in various ways, it has a lot of meaning. And I would consider my great grandmother 100 times much more intelligent than me. So when I look at certain ways she was trying to handle, she might not have gone to school.
You belong to the premier institution of India, globally recognized, the Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay. So, what do you think would be the role of such premier institutions in propagating the cultural heritage or the history of our country?
See, I wouldn't tend to think that these premier institutes have a very crucial role to play. These premier institutes are definitely trying to attract some bright students, and this brightness is not necessarily all-rounded. For instance, I will tell you very simple, common-sensical ways of handling things I could not find in some of our students' project. Whereas the worker who doesn't have any sort of exposure to any of these technologies will be able to quickly find a technological solution for a problem which I have found. So these trainings which are offered in these institutes do not necessarily cater to the needs of India currently. The trend currently is to see to it, unfortunately, is to just see by this degree where can I jump and what kind of salary that I can get. So this first of all has to be changed, and this can be changed and should be changed at a much lower level. So when they are in the schools, primarily it is that particular period in which the mind gets shaped. So impressionable age is before they enter into these institutes. To some extent you can change, but by the time they enter these institutes they are already 18 plus. So if we want to engage ourselves in nation building tasks, I do not think that these institutes will be able to play a very crucial role. I am not saying that the courses on history or science and technology should not be introduced in these institutes. They should be. So certain things can be appreciated only when they reach college level. But certain other things which are important for life, cannot be necessarily communicated by offering courses in these institutes. They can be and they should be, but it may be very difficult for introducing courses, though there are humanities departments which are considered to be far more important today than they were considered earlier, because there is a shift in the global view. So America has undergone various kind of crisis among the youth, so now they feel the importance of humanities and it is far more considered important than it was. So there is a trend here also. So these aspects to some extent can be conveyed, but more effectively they can be conveyed, I think, when they are in schools, unless we shape them in some form. So you will not be able to tinker much more when they come to these institutes. Yeah.
I would like to just ask you, what would you think of an young university like Jain University taking up an initiative like arranging a national seminar on the intellectual traditions of ancient India?
See, this is something which needs to be done by every institute. And the kind of exposure that people have today is almost zero to the intellectual traditions of India. This is one seminar which is focusing on one or two aspects of our tradition. There are dozens and dozens of things to which people have to be exposed, and as an independent institute, so these institutes may not have much problem in trying to organize these things. There are certain issues which may be there when you are supported by government. So if you want to invite somebody to lecture, there will be questions in institute like IIT, but as far as your institute is concerned, so you may not have problems. So we should make our own efforts as much as possible, so in earnest way, to see we may be able to deliver to our own students. See, in a mango tree, millions of flowers will be there, hundreds of them may turn into mango. So similarly, if 10,000 students are studying, if 100 of them get benefited, I think the purpose is served. It is with this attitude we may have to move. That is the trend of the younger generation today. Of course, if you are able to get the right people, delivering things in the right way, without making hyperbole, I think the younger generation will understand. It is not that they are reluctant, but somehow they have not been able to appreciate it with the kind of training that they have received so far. This has to change.